Hey folks, this is Jason Lewis, the producer of the From the Shadows podcast. I just want to remind you about our website, FromTheShadowsPodcast.com. We have a Facebook page. We would appreciate it if you like and follow. Also, join our discussion group on Facebook called After the Shadows. We have a Twitter feed. Please follow us on Twitter. It can be found with @podcast_from. Follow us on Instagram at From the Shadows Podcast. We have a YouTube channel. Go to the search bar at YouTube and put From the Shadows Podcast, and please subscribe to that channel. We are also on the Odyssey Radio Network, and we can be found there at odyssey1.com. We're still on the traditional podcatchers that everybody loves to listen to us on. We get a lot of feedback, so please rate the podcast and communicate with whether you're on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or Google Podcasts. We're there, and we appreciate it when you leave comments for us. We also have a Patreon page. It can be found at www.patreon.com/FromTheShadows. You can receive books, stickers, coffee mugs, and special content just for our Patreon subscribers. Check it out for yourself and see what packages that we have to offer. Well, that's all I have for you right now, folks, and thanks for being a part of the From the Shadows podcast family. So with that being said, let's get this episode started.
Hey, welcome everyone to the From the Shadows podcast. I'm your host, Shane Grove, and with me is
the Judge.
Jason, the producer. What's happening?
I'm doing good. Greetings, everybody.
Oh yeah. Don't go without your standard tagline.
Yeah,
all right.
I mean,
we're trying to brand that.
That's true. It's going to be a ringtone for our fans.
I think it'll be. Maybe we'll get it into a bumper sticker.
There you go.
Now we're super excited, and tonight's guest is probably. What do you want to say, Judge?
I'm excited because I now have a fellow dogman enthusiast.
Yes. Yeah, because me and Jason are really not enthusiastic about the Dogman.
Oh, we don't want to meet him, I'll tell you that.
We don't want to meet him. And despite all the snow here in Ohio and all the, trying to get hooked up for this interview, we've managed to make it work.
May it work. We have a great guest tonight.
So we have Dogman extraordinaire. What is it? The North American Dogman Project. That's your.
Yeah.
That's your. The founder, the leader, the exalted commander of the North American Dogman Project, Joedy Cook, is with us. Welcome, Joedy.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Hey, we're way more excited than you sound. I mean, come on.
No kidding.
Oh no, I'm excited. Trust me. Yeah. Trust me.
So we can tell by your voice. You just probably. I think I hear you doing cartwheels.
Well,
there you go.
Well, so Joedy, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background in some Bigfoot stuff and how you managed to segue into Dogman.
Well, I've been doing this for 30 years, since the 1980s. I was a UFO researcher first. We were getting a lot of Bigfoot reports. When it started doing the Bigfoot stuff, mainly doing Ohio, and then kind of expanding out through the late 80s going into the 90s. And the field got really political, and so I kind of stepped away from it for a while and got into the Dogman research because it was a new cryptid. It was something that was just happening real quick, real fast. A lot of sightings were coming up. I found it to be very interesting and just fell into it, and just been doing it since about started doing it about 1987, but I was still doing Bigfoot research, but actually, dove into the Dogman stuff about 1987.
So most of the Bigfoot stuff that you did was in Ohio?
When I first started out, It was in Ohio. Then I started expanding out to other different states, doing research there. I've been to Canada, did research up there, did investigating, up in Canada and Vancouver. Actually spoke at a conference in Vancouver in 1994. So, like you said, I just been doing it, love doing it. Very interesting subject. Did a lot of research in Ohio. And I'm one of these people when you do research, I'd like to go really deep into the research, like to go really far, a lot further than what most people do when they do research. And when I did the Ohio, research and stuff, I was the first researcher in Ohio to use the word grassman either on a show or a book or whatever. Because there's a lot of history on how the name grassman came about. And it was located up in just one particular area up in the Akron, Ohio area, and that's where a lot of Dutch were still up in that area. So the name goes all the way back until the 1800s. There was a gentleman by the name of William Vanderbilt back in 1877, wrote a book, and it didn't get published until 1911. Wrote a book called A Buckeye Boyhood, and what he basically did was write a lot of books about Ohio. So in this particular book, he has a chapter called In the Woods, and it talks about him growing up in Ohio in the 1840s. And there was a road that went to Utica, which is a small town north of, or a little bit north of Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah,
that was the main route. Yeah, that's the main. Yeah, exactly. Which was the main route that everybody went to from Cincinnati. And he talks about this creature on this road that would harass, people, throw rocks at them, throw sticks, try to, grab the people when they're on horseback or in a buggy or something to that effect. And they called it the Bojesman. Now, the Bojesman is a South African word for bushman. Okay, so when the Dutch came to Ohio, they came from South Africa because the Dutch occupied South Africa. So there's an area in South Africa called the Giant Castle Pass, where there's actually cave paintings of what they call, the giant Bojesman. Now, Bojesman Wiki is what you would call the guy from The Gods Must Be Crazy. He's the human. So they would call this thing the Bojesman, but through time and through, families getting more American and speaking, English and, just progressing to be Americans, it went from Bushman to Grassman. So that's how the name came about.
Wow.
So it's kind of interesting. So yeah, and it took a lot of years to do that research, just on that name to get it, finding it went all the way back to South Africa with the Dutch coming here and their version of Bigfoot in South Africa in an area, like you say, called Giant Castle Pass.
So in the 1840s, was this Vanderbilt guy experiencing a Bigfoot?
Yeah, no, he describes it very well. He describes it as something between Sinbad's Old Man of the Mountain and a gorilla.
Okay.
So he gave a pretty good description.
So before we dive headfirst into the Dogman stuff, Bigfoot. What was some of your favorite cases in Ohio? What evidence did you come across that really maybe sold you on the fact there's a Bigfoot or an Ohio grassman out there?
Well, the biggest area everybody knows is Salt Fork State Park. Every single ranger from when the park was built in the 1970s all the way up to today have seen it. So they know there's something in a park there. So that was one of the biggest areas to do, my research. I would go up there on the weekends, I'd find tracks, I did a lot of castings. Adams County was another place in Ohio where there was just a tremendous amount of sightings. Now, I got a hand cast that I got from a witness. There was a storm one night, and something was banging on the side of their trailer. It was just the two girls home at the time. It was screaming, and they were just getting terrified. So the following morning, their husband, the one girl's husband, came home, and they told him what happened. So he went around, looked around, and he found some large humanoid type tracks. But he found a handprint where it pushed down on a branch, and it only got the upper part of the hand with the four fingers, because the bottom palm and the thumb was actually pushing the branch down into the ground. So he made castings of it, and he contacted the sheriff's department. So this is in the 1980s, early 90s, and contacted the sheriff's department. Sheriff's department came out. So what I did prior to that, I wrote a letter to all 88 counties in Ohio to the sheriff's department, okay, saying, look, if you get a Bigfoot sighting, don't laugh it off. Send the information to me. Here's my contact information. And believe it or not, that's how I got a lot of stuff. A lot of people will call me and say, hey, I had this sighting. I contacted the sheriff's department. Sheriff's department gave me your number, and I called you. And that's how I got this case in Adams County. So the FBI actually had possession of the handprint because it had dermal ridges and everything on it. So they looked at it and wrote back, listen, they said, that whatever made this handprint was a live animal. And they said it kind of looked like a gorilla's handprint. Okay, the dermal ridges kind of went up to what a gorilla's dermal ridges is. The guy's name was Jimmy Chilcutt, and I believe he's a retired police officer in Texas. But he worked with the FBI at the time, and he couldn't determine what it was. He said this thing was either a gorilla's hand or it was a Bigfoot's hand. It was not human.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good evidence, I would say.
Yeah,
I would say so.
Yeah, but here's the thing that you kind of have to understand too. Adams County and Scioto County is very well known for exotic, legal, and illegal animal trade. Okay. Yeah. So could someone had a pet gorilla? Yes, because we had one in our zoo for 20 years that someone in Ohio owned it, and it never seen another gorilla for 20 years. It was by itself, and they had it in a real beautiful little area on their property. And when it got, when they got old, they ended up giving it to the Cincinnati Zoo and so forth. So
it clearly was not Harambe.
How do you own? No. How do you own a gorilla?
You can get licensed for, believe it or not, not no more, not in Ohio anymore, because after this guy let all these animals out, they kind of stopped it. So everything right now is illegal and so forth. So so we have the handprint. So we don't know because he has moles from bone clones. He has them from the Natural History Museum of Man in San Diego, and from the San Diego Zoo. So this handprint didn't match up to any mold of any handprint that's out there of a gorilla. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Wow, I would say so. So you kind of get burn out a little bit with what's going on with Bigfoot. At what point did you start getting sightings that people maybe thought it was Bigfoot and you determined it was something else? I mean, is that something you figured out, or did somebody say?
Well, in the 1980s, going up into the 1990s, there wasn't a real whole lot of dogman stuff other than the Michigan Dogman and the Beast of Bray Road. Okay, those particular areas.
Well,
okay,
you think about it, like if in my story, my Dogman experience was mid 80s, like 85, somewhere in there, 85, 86. And I've said this before, I had no frame of reference. I mean, when I
Right.
saw it, and the thing about it is, I didn't look at it and say werewolf. I didn't say, oh my God, it was a werewolf, because, and I've said this before on other shows, is that my vision of what Hollywood told me werewolf was Lon Chaney Jr. wearing a plaid shirt and ripped jeans. And so
Right.
when I saw it, the first thing that, when I was able to collect myself, the only thing I could describe was the Egyptian god Anubis. That was the only frame of reference that I had. And so, 80s and in early 90s, there's no internet, there's no travel channel, there's none of these things that can, if you saw something, you could say, oh, well, yeah, I can categorize that. That's what people describe as a dog man.
Right.
So my experience predates Bray Road by 6-7 years.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But see, here's the thing. I was getting reports in the late 80s and 90s of a Bigfoot having a snout, having legs like a dog, high pointed ears. Well, I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is a different breed of a Bigfoot. Okay, because I didn't even think about it being a dogman, because the only dogman type case we had in the state of Ohio was the 1972, which was the Defiance, Ohio case.
Right.
Which was like a werewolf is what they called it, that was harassing, this town of Defiance in like 1972. It happened, give or take a week, maybe, timeline. And what's kind of interesting about it, they described this thing as, when the first description of it was a werewolf, not your Lon Chaney werewolf, but your typical wolf that stood on two legs, had high pointed ears, had a snout, had a tail. Now,
European version of werewolf back in
werewolf
1500s.
Right. So the police were, I can't say they were scared, but they were alarmed on what was going on, because it attacked three railroad workers on the first night of the sighting. And those are the ones that described it that way. Now, the police end up saying, well, it's that guy in a costume. They put clothes on him, okay, in order to get people not to be so terrified. But all the witnesses said it never had clothing on it whatsoever. So that was the only case that ever happened in Ohio. And like you said, that was in 72, so you didn't hear anything more about it. So most of the dogman cases that were going from the 80s and 1970s, it stayed within those communities. It never got out.
Well, I didn't tell anybody.
Right, and that was the whole thing. You talk to my neighbors, but it never left that area. Well, when I'm doing my research now in Dogman, going in, to 2000s, well, I'm finding out more and more that, like 45 minutes from me is a town called Germantown, Ohio, and they have what they call the Germantown werewolf. Well, they've had sightings and all kinds of encounters since the 1970s, and they called it the Butter Street Monster at the time. So, and this is something that stayed in the community. Same thing like up in Akron. The dogman stuff that's going on in Akron has been there since the 70s. It's just it stayed within that community. Now people are being more open and letting these stories out, and you're getting a lot more information now. But like I said, the 80s and 90s, it just stayed there. It never came out.
Well, yeah, we had a lady on, and I think you have talked to her, who had an experience. What was it, in 72 too?
Oh yeah, predated.
Yeah,
way
that's
predated
down there
mine.
near Germantown, because she said.
Yeah.
She said she had, when she started, she hadn't told anybody till she came on our show, and it was like, that's 40 some.
She's 60 years old.
Well, she's older than that.
Yeah, 60 some years old.
Yeah, and that's what she said.
Well, and it goes back to,
who are you supposed to tell?
Well, it goes back to one of the reasons why we started our podcast in the first place was when I had my experience, I didn't tell anybody what I saw for fear of being made fun of, roasted, called a liar, called an idiot, just being made sport of. And because, the Travel Channel and all these shows has made cryptids socially acceptable.
Right.
Oh, you saw a Bigfoot. Nobody, well, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, maybe you thought you should. But nobody would call you a nut or anything like that. You know, mainstream media source, you know, TV and movies has made Bigfoot in vogue. And so now now is the time when Grover and I decided to do the podcast. Like, look, now let's open this up, give people who have been hiding in the shadows, shall we say, and not telling their stories, give them a chance to come out and have a forum to come out and start telling people.
Yeah. And like we said before we even went on, and you referenced that some government agencies are wanting to know what you know because maybe people are telling you stuff that they're not telling the government agencies. Well, and that was kind of the judge's reason. If I can come out and tell my story, and I'm a judge, I'm up for re-election. Anybody should feel free to be able to tell their story and not
because let me tell you, when I was a kid and this happened, the last thing I was going to do is pick up the phone and call the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and say, hey, you're not going to believe what I saw out here. You know, I don't even. Yeah, I doubt in the 80s they would have taken a report. They would have said, "Yeah, whatever, kid, quit smoking dope." Well,
the DNR knows everything. I mean, the Ohio DNR knows. I mean, I wrote them under Freedom of Information. And they sent me a letter denying my request, which is it's against the law. You cannot deny a federal, a Freedom of Information Act request. I mean, hell, when I wrote the FBI on Bigfoot, they sent me like 22 documents. This is back in the 80s. Sent me like 22 blacked out documents, but it says in the letter there that there's 2,000 plus documents that are classified on Bigfoot. But like I said, and that's kind of a neat thing too, because here's the thing, and I actually talked to the FBI because the guy, when he sent the letter to me, he says, if you have any questions, here's my name and number. So I called him and I said, you sit there and say you had 2,000 classified documents. I mean, is the FBI searching for Bigfoot? And he laughed and he goes, no. And he goes, let me explain to you. No, he goes, that's not what our job is. But he said, what you have to understand is, when you have an ongoing investigation, he goes, FBI agents are very thorough when they do the report. Okay. If they saw a ladybug on something, they're going to say, I saw a ladybug on it. Okay. They're that thorough when they do the reports. So he says, when they're on an investigation, if they saw Bigfoot or something like that, it's in the document. So that information is classified because it may be an ongoing investigation, or it may even be, a classified area, or we're just protecting the names of the agents because they do undercover work. So that's why they have 2,000 classified documents, because either, those particular reasons, not because they're trying to, collect data on Bigfoot. They can care less about Bigfoot, to be honest with you. It's just, they have some very, other, things they deal with. Other than Bigfoot,
what's it take for the FBI though to get involved in a Bigfoot
missing
investigation?
person?
We'll give you an example. Ruby Ridge. Everybody knew about Ruby Ridge. What happened there? Okay, well, there was a Bigfoot. One of the snipers had a Bigfoot in a site there at Ruby Ridge. That was basically, I guess, monitoring the area and seeing what was going on. Well, in one of the FBI reports, talks about that. He was, following the Bigfoot, in his scope, at Ruby Ridge. So, but there are parts about Ruby Ridge that are still classified, and that particular incident is in the report that's classified. I've had a lot of FBI, I've talked to a lot of people from the FBI, and, they told me a lot of stuff. It's, it's like you said, it's kind of like this, if they're out getting ready to do a drug bust out in the woods or something like that for federal reasons, because, they're doing child trafficking or, gun run or whatever, if they come upon a Bigfoot, it's in the report. If they end up killing one, there's actually, I've talked to FBI guys that say some of them actually end up killing them, on different reasons. one was back in the 1970s when one of the Apollo missions was getting ready to launch. There was one out by the rocket on the fence line, and they shot and killed it.
Wow.
Well,
You know,
astronaut.
yeah.
Well, you think about astronaut Steve Austin.
Oh, jeez.
Battle
there you
royale
go.
was bionic.
Yeah. But it goes, but like I said, it kind of goes to, you know, that kind of stuff. They're not out looking for it. It's just when there's an incident that happens that either, you know, classified, they're protecting the individual agents' names, you know, the property or whatever, or the case because it's ongoing or whatever purpose. That's what those 2,000 classified documents
Well,
are.
yeah, they don't need to be out looking for it. It seems like they run into it.
I don't know if you.
Well, yeah. You know, there's quite a few cases, you know, where you hear, not just, you know, I've heard it from other people. Other people have heard it from other FBI guys where incidents have happened. It's not like they wanted to kill it. It's just, you know, it was either an incident where they kind of had no choice, you know, to take it down. You know, I don't think they would want to do it because, you know, I mean, prior to, you know, Trump's election, I think the FBI was really good people and they were very professional on what they did, you know, and the way they handled themselves. But, and I don't think they would want to do it because the FBI doesn't need that kind of trouble. You know, they have other things they need to be dealing with.
Did you see the David Pilates missing 411 hunters? There was his show. Well, there was an episode. There was an incident, I think, where a guy had disappeared as an adult, and the FBI shows up and they're like, "Why is the FBI here for missing adult? They don't investigate missing adults. You know, they investigate missing children, but they don't investigate unless it's like a serial killer or something." So why don't we shift gears a little bit, get back to the Dogman, because we could talk Bigfoot for days. So you got fascinated with the Dogman stuff back in the 80s, and at some point you decided you were going to start the North American Dogman Project.
Right. I was a deputy sheriff before I went into the Army, and I was at a seminar in Kentucky, okay, and made some friends there, went out to a bar afterwards and just start talking about, you know, crazy stuff that, you know, happened, you know, on your shift and things like that. And one of them was a Kentucky State Trooper, and he goes, and this was in 1987, and he goes, we got called out at this park in Kentucky called Land Between the Lakes. There was an incident that happened out there, some type of massacre. This family was killed, and they're saying, you know, everybody was saying it's you know, it's the beast, and the beast is, you know, this werewolf, and everybody knew about this thing down there. He even heard stories about it prior to, you know, him actually being called out there, you know, for this particular incident. And I'm like, man, this is interesting, you know. So I'm like, I got to go down and check this place out. So I met him, and we went down there, and he showed me, he goes, this was the area that it happened. You know, this is where, you know, the mobile home was, or the RV rather. This is where, you know, the bodies were. And, you know, this is where the little girl was. They found the little girl up in the tree. And I mean, it was just really crazy stuff. I'm like, man, this is something you know, I got to look into. And I kind of, you know, was doing it off and on when I was doing the Bigfoot stuff. And then, like I said, the Bigfoot stuff was really dying down, and then it feels getting real political. So I'm like, you know, this Dogman stuff is like really interesting. There's something to it. And excuse me, it just kind of drew me to it. So I decided to do that, and I just fell in love with it. In about 2006, I started North American Dogman Project. I didn't go online or got real heavy on social media with it until like 2016, because I was one of these people that you know, if I can't produce the evidence in a Bigfoot or Dogman court, should I produce it on social media or on my website? You know, could I persuade a jury with it? You know, because the field, there's so many trolls and stuff in the field, it's just, crazy, just, with all the people out there just giving bad comments and things like that, and you just get tired of it. So that's why I never went online and never did anything like 2006. And so I started the organization, and then we're getting reports in all these different states, and then all these people are like, I love your organization, I want to help out. Okay, that's cool. You can be our state representative, get your team up, and it just went wildfire. We got chapters in Canada, the United States, South America, Australia, New Zealand. We have it in India. We have them in Africa. We have them all in Europe, the UK. It blew up, and we're getting stuff all over the world from different people of different sightings. Like the Europeans, they call it a werewolf. They don't call it a dogman. They call it a werewolf. Same thing in New Zealand and Australia. They call it a werewolf. There are the reports we're getting out in India. These were guys that are former military that were seeing them on the border with China, and they were killing their troops, and they were killing Chinese. And he the guy was explaining, says, this was part of the conflict that's going on with our border. Is the Chinese thinking we're doing it, we're thinking the Chinese are doing it, and then we figure it out. It's not the Chinese figured out it was us, and it's this type of werewolf that's killing our troops along the border. And so we're getting like all kinds of neat stuff like this, and like you said. We're getting stuff from military people, about the subject. They've seen them on the battlefields of Afghanistan and Iraq by Canadian and U.S. troops. It's crazy.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because when I was on Wes's show, Sasquatch Chronicles, he was telling me that Dogman was sightings date all the way back to Mesopotamia, which Mesopotamia is between the Tigris and the Euphrates River, which is Iraq and that area and that whole Middle East. So the Mesopotamians were seeing dogmen long before the Egyptians adopted Anubis in that image.
Right. When I was in Iraq, I was in Iraq in 2003. I was there for the invasion, and we were some of the Iraqi troops and stuff that were there. I would talk with them, and they would telling me that through their history, there was a tribe of what they call dog-headed men that back in Mesopotamia they would trade with, just different things, clothing, food, jewels, just whatever, and they were able to communicate by language. And he said they were dogs that they were human with dog heads. So we knew that, back in Mesopotamia, that there was a tribe of dog-headed men. Now, the Vikings talk about it, having battles with them. The Europeans talk about it, going all the way. The Germans talk about it, going back into, what was that one?
Well, the Grimm fairy tales, the Brothers Grimm fairy tales, they talk about things that happened in the Black Forest. There were these werewolf type creatures that ran on two legs. Obviously, I've got Red Riding Hood story based on it.
Right. I've got a drawing from a newspaper in 1731 out of Germany. And how they did it was, they did the carving, they put the ink on it, and it made the impression. And the werewolf, this is a straight Van Helsing style werewolf, this drawing is. And this was something that came into one of these towns in Germany, in the 1700s.
Oh, my.
So that, very interesting. And like I said, I actually have a copy of it, where it shows it. Very interesting.
Yeah,
so
that's fascinating.
So dogman, we use the term dogman, but bipedal canine creatures have been around since the cradle of civilization, the beginning of man.
Right.
They have, they're internationally, they're on battlefields, they're doing all this stuff. They're an international phenomenon, but the average, swinging cryptid guy knows almost nothing about it.
Yeah. Or believes that it's such a fantastical idea.
I'll believe in Bigfoot, but I'm not going to believe in a dog man.
Right, but the thing of it is, werewolves is like vampires. It's a mystical creature. It's something we all grew up, in movies, and that's why it's kind of hard for a lot of people to believe that these things exist. You go down Louisiana, okay?
The Lougarou.
It's all the Lougarou, but there's different areas of Louisiana that that's controlled by vampires, and there's areas that are controlled by werewolves. Okay, and they kill each other. It's very well known. But when the werewolves, when I say werewolves, I'm talking like people who believe that they're werewolves. Do they transform? Who knows? Okay, but you have that culture in Louisiana. So you have all kinds of different type of folklores that people grew up on, and especially in like small little communities. But when it comes to dogman, werewolf, it's a little bit harder to bite with a lot of people. They know they want to believe it, but they kind of don't want to believe it, because if you look at Bigfoot or dogman, okay, this is a thing that goes bump in the night, okay, but he bites. That's the difference.
Well, I think the big difference is, I think it's easier for someone to wrap their head around the fact that there is a great ape that did not go extinct and is still roaming the woods in the Pacific Northwest, and
they don't normally seem very threatening.
They don't seem very threatening. They normally don't, but it's an ape. It's an ape, and it's just undiscovered ape. But to take the leap to saying, look, there is a bipedal wolf that runs around on 2 feet that is a werewolf per se, because the whole werewolf genre is predicated on the fact that, and I know that some of the Lougarou stuff is this way, is that you take a human being and they're going to metamorphose into a wolf. And I think that is very difficult for people to swallow. Is that, look, the from a physiological standpoint, how would someone's bone structure, muscle structure, they're going to just change, magically into a wolf? And I think it's hard to swallow.
Yeah, it's totally impossible for transformation. And I think a lot of people, that's part of the reason why people don't think about that. But if you look at, dogman the way I do, I think that this is a species that has always been here, just like Bigfoot. But it was, the numbers were not that great. The population, I believe, has gone up. But why are we having a lot more sightings? Well, we're having a lot more sightings because we're going into their territory, building homes, building communities.
Urban sprawl.
Urban sprawl. And the thing of it is about predators, okay, and most animals in general, they don't leave their area, unless the food source is gone. Or if there's some type of environmental catastrophe, or something to that effect, the water's gone, food's gone, forest fires, things like that. They basically stay in the same area. Humans are the same way. Most humans, we stay within, a 10-mile radius of where we're born. Only time we leave is either through financial, with a job, or, we had to end up leaving because we lost our home, something to that effect. But, most people, they stay within, the 10-mile radius of where they live. Animals are the same way.
Sure. So I think that brings us to important segue. From my experience, when I was a teenager, I believed what I saw was a physical creature. That's what I believed. And then we had Linda Gottfried on the show, and we started talking, and she throws out at us a whole different idea that Dogman is a supernatural creature that can be flesh and blood, but it's a supernatural creature, and it has a direct correlation to Indian burial grounds. And so what she did was she took a Dogman sighting and gridded it, and then she gridded Native American burial sites, and when she transposed them, they lined up perfectly. So that
Right,
had
and-
me and Grover thinking. And so I went back to Temple Road, which is where I had my Dogman sighting, a few miles from where we're at right now. And sure as heck, within 300 yards is an Indian burial ground. And so then that
Right,
started the whole thinking that, wait a minute, what are these things?
Right, because here where I live, we have one on our street in someone's front yard. There's an Indian burial ground. He's not allowed to mow it or anything. The state has to come in and maintain that area. And where was this sighting that we had? Within 100 yards of where this burial ground is, and we're seeing that all over the country. But also, what we went even further than that. What we did was we wrote the U.S. Forestry Service and a couple other DNRs about information on bear attacks and seasonal bear attacks. So we lined up Dogman reports in these particular areas where they were bear attacks. Now, a Dogman attack on a human or an animal can very be confused with a bear, and it can be easily covered up by a bear because the 5 claws, the way the animal or the human was killed, it's bear country, so it's easy to sit there and say it was bear. Okay,
Sure.
so it lined up. So these reports of Dogman sightings lined up perfectly where bear attacks took place.
Oh my!
So so that was really interesting. So we were contacted by a veterinarian for the U.S. Forestry Service, and she was telling us that something is digging bears out of hibernation and killing them.
What?
Okay.
Yeah. They don't know what it is, but it's digging the bears up. She's talking grizzly bears. They're finding grizzly bears with their backs snapped.
Oh my!
Oh man.
Okay, and they said there is nothing that can snap a grizzly bear's back. Nothing. Okay, maybe another grizzly bear. Okay,
A grizzly
but-
bear would be hibernating.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're
Right,
finding finding bears that should be hibernating. They're finding their bodies with their back snapped. Are they finding them like half eaten or?
No, they're finding them. Whatever doing it is killing them. Okay,
For sport or for territorial reasons?
Probably for territorial reasons. There's no other reason because they're not eating them. They're not even. Some like there's some cubs. That the cubs were killed. But nothing was eaten. You can see where the den was dug up. Okay, and the bears were killed.
Which would show
And,
a
like
level of intelligence because you wouldn't want to fight a grizzly bear when it's fully nourished during this normal season.
Right.
You'd wait till it was weakened
Correct.
and in its den.
Right. So would it be Bigfoot? No, I don't think it would be Bigfoot because I don't think a bear is a threat to Bigfoot. I truly believe that. I believe they've had confrontations, okay? But I've heard too many stories from people that seen bears run from Bigfoot. And I actually talked to one guy from the U.S. Forestry Service that sat and told me, he goes, I'm laying on the ground. I'm in some bush line. I'm looking at some elk. I'm doing research. Okay, there's an elk standing right there, real beautiful. Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. It was a moose. My bad. It was a moose, and he was sitting there grazing. He said all of a sudden a Bigfoot comes out, grabs the moose, snaps his neck, boom, went down. Okay,
Wow.
Another Bigfoot comes out. Okay, they're getting ready to pick this moose up. He said a grizzly bear comes out. So a grizzly bear wants that elk or wants that moose. He said that Bigfoot jumped on this bear and he snapped its neck or did something, but he killed the grizzly bear instantly. He said one Bigfoot picked up the moose, walked off with it, and the other one picked up the bear. So that tells me that
That is
Bigfoot.
powerful.
Oh yeah, This guy was terrified. I mean, he goes, he peed himself.
So why
Yeah,
why do people go out in the woods looking for Bigfoot without high-powered rifles?
Well, the thing of it is, the U.S. Forestry Service never carried weapons until the 1970s. Okay. Now, there was an incident that happened at Smoky Mountains, okay, about the little boy that came up missing. Mm-hmm. I can't think of the kid's name at the top of my it was just right at the top of my tongue, but I can't remember it now. But there was a little boy that was camping there with his family. He was playing with the neighbor kids that were camped next door. The kid came up missing. 2 kids came back. They don't know what happened to the kid. Okay, so they call the Rangers. Are out there looking for this kid. The FBI shows up because now you have a missing kid. And so no one knows. So to this day, the FBI still has a $250 or $2,500 reward for any information on this kid. Okay, to this day. And his last name's Martin. So now the FBI ended up talking with another group of family that was hiking that said that they saw Bigfoot carrying a child.
Oh, my.
Okay, so the FBI never told the family that particular incident, that, because they said it was irrelevant. Okay, so so they sent in the U.S. Special Forces, okay, to look for this child. You can't use U.S. military on, you're not allowed to be used.
On a missing persons case.
Yeah, on a missing person or anything like that. Now, the stuff that's going on and watching, that's a different case. But to bring in U.S. Special Forces, okay, so when this incident happened, Rangers never carried firearms because 1 week prior to that incident, a ranger was attacked and nearly killed by Bigfoot. So that's why they carry weapons. Okay, so to get back to the story, the FBI agent that handled that case committed suicide.
Really?
So that's still an ongoing case. Now, when I wrote the FBI under Freedom of Information Act, they sent me 7 files. Okay, serial 1, serial 2, serial 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and each serial has reports in it. Well, serial 4 was missing. Okay, I got all of them, and it says serial 4 information missing. So I asked the FBI, why is that missing? Where's that information at? And he goes, we don't know. It probably got destroyed in sterilization or whatever. We don't know. Okay, so I believe serial 4 had information about that incident.
So he sent the special forces in.
Yeah, Now, Dave Pilati talks about that in one of his 411 books.
I've heard that story there that you're telling.
Yeah. So to go back to what you're saying, now they carry weapons, they carry firearms, so they do protect themselves.
See, the stories that you're telling me, and I've been saying this through multiple shows, I don't want to go out looking for Bigfoot because I think it's an apex predator that'll kill you. And you get all these people out there, I'm going to go hunting Bigfoot, I'm going to get tenting, and I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm like, why would you do that? I mean, I wouldn't want to do that for a grizzly bear. I mean, how many people would say, you know what, let's go out and look for grizzly bears and not take a gun with us, and let's go ahead and do some tree knocks or that version to lure a grizzly bear in. And why don't we just leave our food laying out by our tents to have the bear come up? So, I mean, nobody would do that. And Bigfoot, from all accounts, is more clever, more intelligent, and more lethal than a grizzly bear. Why would anybody in their right mind do this? And then you throw in, and obviously the same with Dogman situation. And I still to this day can't figure out with my Dogman experience what it was doing with me, why it didn't just come out and grab me, catch me, because it clearly could have.
Well, the thing of it is about predators won't kill or attack if they're not hungry. Okay. But we know that Dogman is territorial. So, and we know that there's cases that he has killed people.
So I want to touch back on that land between the lakes incident, because that story fascinates me. How much more research did you do into that? And what?
Oh, dude, let me tell you.
Well, for some of our listeners that aren't quite familiar with the story, briefly give us the background on the Land Between the Lakes, because I know there's some of our listeners that don't know what it is.
Okay. In 1963, John F. Kennedy booted everybody out of that area. All right, made everybody leave.
And where's this area at?
In Kentucky.
I'm sorry?
Well, I was trying to
It's Kentucky, Kentucky.
I know where it's at.
And
We
Tennessee.
have smart listeners. They heard the first time when he said.
Okay. So it sits between Kentucky and Tennessee. So Kennedy moved everybody out and made it a national reserve recreation center. So no one knows why they did it. The people were mad. Cemeteries are still there. Okay, so the people still come in and visit their loved ones. But there's bunkers that's built all around there. And no one knows why these bunkers are there. They're concrete bunkers. Some of them have no doors whatsoever, no windows, and some just have a door. So no one knows why these bunkers were there for whatever reason. So they knew something was in that park. The people, the residents, knew that there was something there long before Land Between the Lakes actually became a recreation, area. So people start going, they're camping there, having good times. People are seeing stuff. Well, sometime between 1982 and 1983, a family was going there camping. They're in the camping area. The mother and the son was outside the camper. The little girl was inside. The father was by where the hitch was. So this is kind of the controversy thing about the story. So some people say it was an RV hauling a car, and some people say it was a car hauling a camper. So it just depends on who you hear the story was. But all the police officers who are there told me it was a car hauling a camper. So this thing came out, killed the father. The mother and the little boy ran inside, locked themselves in. It went towards the mother and the son. It was busting through the door, got the door open. Mother got between it and the little boy. It killed the mother, killed the little boy. Now, put the little girl into the back room, locked her back there. Well, I guess she must have been crying. It went back there and got the child. She was smaller, so I guess that was easier to get away with. So they found the little girl in a tree, half eaten, about 40 yards away. Well, how it came about was there was another family that was coming out, saw the bodies, went out and reported it to the police. The police showed up. Different jurisdictions showed up. Different counties, coroners showed up. So it was a whole disarray of people there. Okay. So you're getting bits and pieces from different people that were there, because not everybody was privy to what was going on, because you had people that were there on site when it happened, first there. And then you have people that were coming in after it happened and hearing what was going on and seeing what they were able to see and not seeing what they were able to see. So this is how the story went. So everybody knew about the massacre at Land Between the Lakes. So that was like the biggest thing for like years. I first heard about it in 1987.
Because you actually talked to one of the troopers that were there on site. Right.
I talked to 6 of them that were there. And all 6 within from 1987 to 2015. I talked to 6 of them, and all 6 took me all to the same spot where it happened.
Oh, geez. So they...
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So that...
Yeah.
Everybody was in agreement, yes.
Right. So everybody was in agreement. So about 2 years ago, I did a podcast, and there was this girl that was listening to the podcast, and I gave out information how to get a hold of me if anybody wants to talk about their Dogman story. So the girl sent me an email saying, I'm very much in this subject. I knew about it as a kid. My father talked about it, to us, but we weren't allowed to talk about it because there was an incident that happened, and my father wants to talk about it. He's dying of stage 4 cancer. So he wants to tell a story. So I talked to him on the phone, and I said, okay, cool, I'll drive down to Kentucky. I'll interview you. Part of the stipulation was I'm not allowed to show his face in the interview for the safety of his children. Okay, so the guy verifies, that he worked for the, at the time it was called Kentucky Fish and Game. He worked for them, showed, his retirement ID card, showed me, tax forms, showed me his LES forms, everything, awards, citations, everything, verifying who he was and who he worked for. So he goes, in 1979, I was off. And, I've been down LBL, a lot. I stocked some fish down there, excuse me, in some areas and so forth. So it's some of the best fishing. So he went down there fishing. Okay, about 4:30 in the morning he's down there. So he's fishing to about 7:30. There's a fog that starts to rise and stuff, so he decides he's going to go ahead and leave. The fishing was bad. So he didn't go out further into the water because with the fog he was afraid he might have got hit by another boat, and he's just in a small little boat with a little engine on it. So he's going along the shoreline. So it's getting lighter, and he sees a camp spot off to his left, and he sees the tent. He sees like a pickup truck, some lawn chairs, cooler things like that that's sitting out at the campsite. So then he sees something on the opposite side of the tent, and he thought it was a horse because it was on all fours. So as he's getting closer, he's seeing what this thing is because it stands up. So he said, man, this thing, was huge. Had arms like a human, legs like a dog, had high pointed ears. It had a snout, but he said the face kind of looked like a hyena, not so much like a dog, but it gave the appearance of a dog. Okay, and he said it was standing on 2 legs. And he said at that time, these 2 people, this young couple, is coming out of the tent. And he's yelling at them, look over there, look behind you, look behind you. And they're looking at him because it's early morning, they're just waking up. They don't know what this guy's doing, talking about. And he said all of a sudden, this thing just pounces these 2 people. And he's ripping, it's killing them, ripping them. And I'm sitting there in my boat watching this happen. He goes, I end up urinating on myself. Scared me that bad. He says, I passed out. And my boat, end up going off on, some shoreline further down. And he said I was out probably for about an hour. It terrified him that bad.
Wow.
That he saw that this killed this family, or these 2 people. So he goes, I didn't report it. And I go, why didn't you? I got this interview on tape. Okay. And I said, well, why didn't you report it? He goes, they either would have killed me, or I would have lost my job, or they would have ruined my life, because everybody knew there was something there. Everybody knew that, people were being attacked. Animals were coming up missing. People were coming up missing. And they knew it was this thing here. And they were told never to talk about it, never report it. So he goes, I was reading through newspapers the next couple of days to see if there was a bear attack down there or a big cat attack. He was just, talking to people about, hey, anything new, exciting, any rumors, just trying to see if anything came about. And he says, it was dead. I mean, no one talked about it. He goes, I go back to that area a few months later, and the campsite's gone. It's all trees there. They planted trees in that area, and they put a berm up on the road to block the road. So he gave us the exact location where it happened. So we actually went down there, and the berm and the blocking that road is still there. And what they did was they put the trees, planted trees there, and the trees weren't that big because, it takes a long time for trees to grow. And this is 1979, so that's what, almost 30 years. So trees don't grow that fast. They get big, but they don't get humongous in 30 years. So what they did was they cut the shoreline. So where there's like 2 foot drop of beach now from where the area where the campsite was. So that whole area where the campsite actually sat was all dug up and moved.
So let me ask you this: why the secrecy? Why? I mean, why? If there's, I mean, why not just say, "Hey, listen, there's something out there. There's a predator. We're gonna get it. We're gonna bring in a big game hunter. We're gonna shoot it. Everybody, chill." Why the secrecy?
I think it's for the control factor.
One, it's a control factor, and two, it's a loss of revenue. Okay, but here's the thing: when I was talking with the people at LBL, won't talk about this, and why they're on property. When you're off property, they'll talk about it. And I talked to someone down at LBL that was within the commission area. Okay, so they were some of the high people of the park there, and I said to them, you know, if you want this to go away, monetize it. Okay, get T-shirts, get little stuffed animals, do storytelling, get it out there. Okay, you're going to have a lot of people come and you're going to make some money, and sooner or later people are going to say, you know what, there's nothing to it. They're just trying to make money off of it, and it's going to go away. Same thing happened at Salt Fork State Park. Okay, Salt Fork State Park got smart. They monetized Bigfoot being there, and it stopped the people from actually, you know, going out to the field a lot. Now they have a Bigfoot conference they did every year. They make money off of it, but you didn't have the people searching for Bigfoot there as you did prior to them monetizing it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and that's why I try to explain. That's why I try to explain to them. You know, they have a little outside. When you first get into LBL, there's a little outside theater. I said, sit there and tell the ghost stories. Tell the stories of the beasts laying between the lakes. Okay, monetize it, and it will go away.
By the way,
You know,
I just looked up on Google Maps, Land Between the Lakes. Holy smokes.
it's a huge area.
It's a huge area. And I'm going to tell you right now, if there was something out there, good luck finding it. I mean, it is. I mean, I never knew that this, I mean, was this vast.
Not to mention, it probably can make its own den, and you would walk right by and not even know it.
And the amount of shoreline, because you have the different, you know, the fingers of the lakes. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is, I mean, for a apex predator like this thing, oh my gosh, you'd never find it. If it didn't want to be found, you could never.
Yeah, it's not going to be found. And you know, the thing about it, you know, like I said, the area is just huge. Now I'm working with the network right now. We're actually going to go and do a 2-hour special with the Travel Channel on Land Between the Lakes, on the beach of Land Between the Lakes.
Now, are you going to go out and will they let somebody go out and actively search for this thing?
Well, the networks is in talks with the park right now to do it. You know, because they frown on people filming out there. You know, I mean, when we were there filming our documentary that we did on Land Between the Lakes, they harassed us big time. I mean, literally harassed us. They were following us around, seeing what we were doing. They were in our tents looking at our stuff while we were gone, you know, filming. I mean, it was nuts, you know. So, you know, I told the networks, I said, you know, you're going to have to deal with them in a way that, you know, you're not going to get them. You're not going to no one's there at that park's going to interview for the show. You know, they're going to let you go in there. They're going to let you go to certain areas, and just get in there, do what we got to do, and get out, and we'll get it together by then. You know, what needs to be put in there with the witnesses and so forth. So I don't know.
So what's
have to wait and see
interesting,
what
then,
happens.
though, Jody, is that I have read things where people say this is an urban legend. It never happened. It's a hoax. These people, it's a made up story. And you've talked to 6 law enforcement officers who were there. So how about the fact that they've tried to control the narrative by just saying, well, this is a hoax. It never happened.
Well, here's the thing. There's a woman who was a teenager not teenager, she was in her 20s rather, at the time it happened. She personally knows the first 2 police officers that showed up on scene. She knows them personally, and they told her the story. Barton Nutley, he's another researcher for Land Between the Lakes. He's talked to numerous law enforcement officers that's been there. If this is a hoax, it's a well-coordinated hoax with a lot of law enforcement that's involved, taking the time and money to talk to us. Okay? Yeah. There's just no way that this is a fairy tale. It never existed, because the way that Land Between the Lakes acts about this subject, deals with people, shows that there's something there. It proves that there's something there and something happened. When we went our documentary, we went into the Welcome Center and they asked us why we were there. Are we here, visiting for the day? Are we camping? What are we doing? And we go, no, we're camping. We need to purchase some campsites. We're doing a documentary on the piece of land between the lakes. And the girl looked at us with this serious face. And one that was standing next to her went into the back room, called the Rangers on us.
Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're
very welcoming from a welcome center.
Right. So they're told to do that. They're told if anybody comes in and talks about it, they're to call the Rangers right away.
I still don't understand, why don't you bring in some of the best hunters in the world, send them out there, take this thing out? Because obviously, if we think about it as a biological creature, there's more than one of them. Because
there's more than one, but see, the thing of it is, how can I say it? I don't want the thing killed to be proven that it exists. Okay. And if you send a hunter in there, a well-trained hunter is going up against a better well-trained hunter. Mm-hmm. Okay. That can see at night, that can stalk, move silently,
sense of smell better.
Sense of smell better, everything. So, I mean, it's useless. I mean, you would literally have to send an army in there, with thermal imaging, night vision, and, just do a complete sweep of the area and move them into one location, and you're going to end up getting people hurt or killed in the process.
There will still be a lot of casualties.
It definitely, so it defeats the purpose. So, the best thing for them to do is wait for one of their people to do it, And there's lots of stories that, their people have gone out there and killed one or two. Even Bigfoot, there's Bigfoot at LBL. I mean, there's a road, I'm trying to think, is the 68. I think it's 68 that separates north and south of LBL. And the Dogmen are all in the north and Bigfoots are all in the south. So they,
Field McCoy action.
Yeah, type thing.
I got one question, because I know that you spoke with a lot of three-letter agency named trained individuals. When they've accidentally or purposefully killed one of these here things, be it a Bigfoot or a Dogman, what happens to the corpse? I mean, do scientists come in? Are they study these things?
I'm sure they do. It gets turned over, to somebody, right. You remember that movie, Iceman Cometh?
Yeah.
And they found and they put him in that facility, and he never knew that he was in a facility because it was just so big. And, they were able to change the environment and things like that. Do we have those for Bigfoot and Dogman? I'm sure we do. I'm sure they have a live Bigfoot, more than one, and probably a live Dogman somewhere in some facility somewhere figuring a way how they can weaponize it. And I use that very strongly because
maybe that's
Scott Air Force Base.
Maybe that's why they
Right.
show up on the battlefield some places.
Right. Because Scott Air Force Base is in possession of the actual bed from The Exorcist. Okay. So why does the Air Force have the bed from the original Exorcist case, which was a boy and not a girl?
Right.
Okay. So why does the Air Force have that hidden? Okay. Other than trying to weaponize it.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. You know, so the military, whatever they can weaponize, you know, they're going to weaponize it. Okay.
Wow.
You know, and
The
if they
bed
can
from
get
The Exorcist is one of the last things you'd think.
Yeah, I gotta be
Yeah,
honest.
It's
I'm
like
saying over
Nazi
that.
stuff. It's like the Nazis, you know.
Yeah,
with-
trying to find the lost ark of the covenant.
yeah, you know, but you know, the thing of it is, you know, we live in a strange world. God knows. I mean, you know, what our government is in possession of. You know, what's in possession at the Pentagon behind some of those big safes, you know, safe doors and stuff. You know, we just don't know, you know, what they're in possession of. You know, like I said, if they can take an apex predator like a Dogman and use it on the battlefield, you know, by putting a chip in it to control it, I'm sure they'll do it. I mean, look what the Russians did. They were trying to,
Yep.
you know, mate gorillas with humans to make a super soldier.
Yeah, who's to say
You know,
that they're
and-
not trying to splice the genes of a Bigfoot or a Dogman with common human DNA?
Well, you know, I mean, they can grow a human's hair on the back of a mouse.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
so who? I mean, I'm sure they've done it or they're trying it. You know, there's so many black projects out there. You know,
No, it's incredible.
So
Yeah,
Jody,
you
you're
know.
going to, so if I had to say what camp you're in, you're in the camp that Dogman is a physical, biological creature that could be captured, could be kept in a cage. And I think where Linda Gottfried is coming from is that this is a supernatural creature. Although it can appear in flesh and blood, it's a multi-dimensional being.
well, I agree with her, but I can't honestly say that it. I think it's a flesh and blood. Okay, but I know there's, you know, supernatural about it, and I know there's extraterrestrial about it. Okay, so if anything, it's all three. Okay, the reason why I say extraterrestrial is back in 2000. Was it 2015? I was at a conference, and the conference was held in a hotel that had a restaurant and a bar. So after the conference, everybody went to the restaurant and bar to get something to eat. I went to the bar to get something to drink. There was a guy sitting there. He was asking, you know, what's going on here, you know, at the hotel. I'd say all kinds of crazy stuff, and I say it's a paranormal conference, and he goes, you know, ghost hunting and stuff like that. And I go, yeah. He goes, you a ghost hunter? I go, no. You know, I gave a lecture on Bigfoot and Dogman. And he's looking at me, and he goes, Dogman. And I go, yeah. And he goes, tell me about Dogman. So I was telling him about it. So he was military. Guy had, you know, with the tattoos, military tattoos and stuff. Right. We're sitting there talking. We talked about the different bases we were on, different areas of the base. So I knew this guy was military because he would never know some of the stuff that we talked about unless you were in the military on that base. And he goes, do you believe in, you know, the Dogman stuff? And I go, yeah, I really do. I think there's something to it. And he goes, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to think I'm crazy, but yeah, I've seen them. You know, we know about them and so forth. He goes, I am part of the military.
Finish this story, and then I'm going to have you talk about what's going on in Akron.
Okay.
So go ahead and finish
Right.
talking about the dude at the bar.
Okay. Right. So he was telling me he was part of a black group. Okay. That his job was they go and recover down UFOs and alien bodies and so forth. Yeah, he's telling me this. You know, I mean, serious as a heart attack, okay? So he said that in the 1970s, the U.S. came across a new species of alien that was canine. But they were very hostile. They were predator-type animals. And we end up recovering a craft with 4 of them alive. And they said they were so dangerous and so much of a threat because they were an intelligent species, that they did not keep them in the United States. They kept them in a facility in South America, in Honduras. So in this facility, they were able to take over the facility. They killed a few people. They got out. So his team had to go down to South America and take out this group of dogmen. But he said they wore like a outfit that was kind of like body armor almost, kind of like a halo type outfit, the way he described it. And they had special weapons, you know, that to kill these animals. And when he killed them, they made like this horrendous, nasty cry when you killed them. But he said they didn't have common sense, but they had intelligence. So that was his job, and they ended up killing them. So I thought, okay, you know, that was like a really odd story. I mean, it was like way out there. So I did this conference a year later, and I was talking to Linda Goffrey, and I told her about it. And Linda said, Joedy, I was told the same story by a different person that was very similar. So now she ended up talking to another member of that team about the same incident, okay, which I thought was really odd, okay. So I get the story from this guy in Afghanistan. They were out looking for a U.S. patrol that was missing. Okay, they end up finding the patrol. Their just communications were down, so they weren't able to communicate with them. It was in Kandahar Valley. Okay, so they're up in the mountains. So the team's breaking off looking for this other team. So he's going up the side of this mountain, him and this other soldier sitting there, and he hears screaming. So he told the other guy, stay here and cover my 6. I'm going to go up. So he goes up, and he's coming over the edge, and he's looking over, and he goes, I'm telling you, there's 3 insurgents. 2 of them are already dead, and these wolves wearing body armor cut this guy in 2 with this sword. And he said the sword looked like something from the movie Scorpion King.
What?
Okay. Yeah. He said it hit the guy from the shoulder going all the way down. And he goes, then they start sniffing the air, and they're looking around, they're sniffing the air. And the other one patted the other one's hand and like twitched his head like, we got to go. And he went behind, you know, this tree, and he said this blue flash of light flashes, and he doesn't see them anymore. So he said they didn't have a helmet on. The body armor went down to the wrist and right above the ankle. So he was able to see the feet like a dog and the tail. And he goes, I kid you not. All right. So one part of this story, from the first part of the story, I never told anybody, was that guy said that they had these swords that were like a sickle. Okay.
Like a scythe.
Now, if you look at it like a scythe, so if you look at the pictures of Anubis, he's carrying one.
Ooh.
So, yeah. So, all right. So that's even. So I'm like, okay. So I have 2 different stories that are, you know, probably 8 years apart, and they're described the same way. Okay. So we get in contact with this guy, this Canadian soldiers who's in Kandahar. Okay. Now they're in a ravine. Okay. They're set up in a defensive position. He said there's this wall that kind of went around the city. Okay. He said, here's a bunch of kids running, screaming, coming around the corner of this ravine. okay, or this wall, and then a pack of dogs start running. So they're thinking, well, the dogs are coming after the kids, so they start shooting the dogs. So the dogs don't get the kids, and then the dogs end up passing the kids. Okay, so they see something coming around the edge there, so the guy pops smoke. Okay, and he says out of the smoke was this large wolf. He said it looked like Anubis. He said it had this like skirt, Egyptian style skirt. Okay, and it comes out of the smoke, and they're shooting at this thing, and it's not affecting it at all. You know, and then it goes back into the smoke, and it's gone. And and that's the way they describe this thing. I mean, it's weird. So then we talked to a guy from the 82nd Air. He was Special Forces attached with the 82nd Airborne and Baghdad out of Camp Victory. So he's up on it, on top of a building in a sniper's position, just watching the town. So he sees like two insurgents, okay, and they're coming out like this alleyway, and they're like looking and pointing and all this stuff. So he has a scope on them. So his spotter says, "Look to the left," and he goes, "There's this huge wolf coming down the road." And the insurgents are getting ready to pull the weapons up, and he said this thing gets up on 2 feet and runs towards them and grabs the two insurgents, and pulls them back in the alley. And then you hear them scream. And he goes, the whole time I had this on my scope, he says, I never seen, and he never said werewolf or anything like that. He says, I never seen a wolf get up and run on 2 legs and grab 2 guys and pull them in the alley. He said that was the strangest thing I ever seen. So what's kind of interesting about this whole thing with the body armor, okay? So let's go back further. Let's go to Star Wars. All right, when George Lucas did Star Wars. Now, George Lucas was a Mason, okay? Everybody who ran NASA were Masons, okay? So George Lucas was able to see things that no one else was able to see for the Star Wars movie, okay? So, to give you a perfect example, Richard Hoagland wrote this book called Dark Mission. And it talks about the Masons involved in NASA and some of the stuff that was covered up that was found on the moon. Well, they found a crash site on the moon, and they found parts of a robot. Well, in his book, he has a colored picture that was released from NASA of the robot's head that looks identical to CP30. Now, if you Google image Richard Hoagland's Dark Mission robot's head, you'll see the color picture, and you'll see a picture of CP30's head right next to it, and it's the same thing. I mean, it's crazy. Okay, so Star Wars, came out in 77. Yeah. So I think it was probably 79. There was a book that came out that Lucasfilms put out on Star Wars that talked about Luke Skywalker and all of them, talked about their equipment and weapons and some of the creatures that were in the bar. Okay. Now, in that movie, he had 2 werewolves in that bar. Okay. Yeah. In the movie. Okay. Now, when they talk about the werewolves, there's a color drawing of the werewolf, and the werewolf is wearing body armor that is down to the wrist, that is above the ankle, and I have a color picture of it that I got from the magazine, from the book. And it's identical described to what these soldiers saw in Afghanistan and in South America, to the T. Now, how did he know about a werewolf or a dogman type creature, okay, when he did Star Wars, okay, and was able to put it in his movie and as an actual color picture of it, of what the thing looked like with the body armor that matches, okay? He had to get that from NASA, and they had to get it from somebody, okay? So, this one guy said, we got in contact with this species in the early 70s. So it's all kind of like a connection to it, that's kind of odd. So we get this retired colonel from the Air Force, contacting us. And he goes, I love your subject and everything like that, but these things are extraterrestrial. Okay. And I said, can you explain a little bit more? And I ended up talking to the guy on the phone. And he goes, we got in contact with a species of aliens. We're in contact with different species, 25 different species. Some we trust, some we don't. This particular species we don't trust. Okay, technology-wise, okay, we're compatible to them in a fight. Okay, so that's why they don't screw with us. But what they do is they go from planet to planet and they take over civilizations. And how they do it, they have clones. And these clones are these dog-headed soldiers that they send down to the planet to terrorize the planet. They come in and destroy the clones and save the planet. So now they're friends. So they infiltrate into their government, infiltrate into all different parts of society, and end up taking it over. So, they knew Earth was, even though we're a new young planet, but we are a war race of people. So, they didn't screw with us to that point. Okay. So, because they knew we had nuclear weapons. Okay. So and it's the way he's explaining this to me. So I'm like, okay, so these ones that we're seeing on the battlefields of Afghanistan, Iraq, South America, are these drones or hybrids rather that we end up getting in contact with, and that's why they're there. It's far-fetched. It really is. But when you sit there and look at all these different stories that you get from, throughout the years, they're all connecting. I mean, it's weird.
Yeah, and if anybody's getting all the stories, it's definitely you through the North American Dogman Project.
So the interesting thing is, so the interesting thing is you have law enforcement, you have military, you have government people, and they're all corroborating stories that there are these creatures that are dog-like, very lethal, and they've been here potentially since the beginning of man.
Right. I mean, look at it this way. Okay. The possibility of the hollow earth theory. Okay. We know Hitler believed in it. He actually looked for it. Another civilization inside our earth. We know the U.S. government did it. We send a whole battle fleet to Antarctica looking for it. So could these creatures be like Bigfoot, Mothman, Dogman, Loveland Frogman, these different type of creatures? Could they be creatures that are living in the earth? What's that possibility? And that's where the supernatural stuff probably comes in. It's how you want to look at it. It's how you interpret it. But you have to be very open to the possibility, that, these things are from here. My thing when it comes to, real quick, on UFOs, I believe they're not coming from other planets. I believe that they're already been here. They're already living in our oceans. They have bases, in our oceans. They were here long before we are. And if you look at, 70% of UFO sightings are all over water.
We've only explored, I just saw this special on TV about underwater UFO bases. They basically look, the Earth is 70% water, and we've only explored 5% of that.
Yeah, we know more about,
Space.
different solar systems and space and solar systems than we do, about our own ocean. Any type of prehistoric, creature like the megalodon or, plesiosaurs, those things could still live. Not everything died, 65 million years ago. We know that. The alligators didn't. The coelacanth didn't. Different species of spiders and so forth, bugs, never died. They were able to survive.
Mosquitoes are still around.
Yeah, mosquitoes are still around. Yeah.
Cockroaches. They're just a little smaller.
Cockroaches can survive a nuclear war.
Jeez. Well, before we let you go here, I want you to touch a little bit on an area where the judge and I spent some of our youth. Maybe those records are kind of sealed, though, right?
We're talking about Akron.
Our time in Akron.
I went to law school in Akron with Matt Moneymaker.
With Matt Moneymaker, yeah. The judge went to law school with Matt Moneymaker. How about that? So I heard you mention that Akron's kind of a hot spot.
It is. There's a metro park in Akron where they're having a lot of sightings. Okay, and the metro park actually admitted that there's something there. They know there's something there. It's just they don't talk about it. Okay.
Do you remember which metro park that is?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'll tell you guys off,
Okay.
And stuff, because like I said, it's still going, still ongoing investigation, because right now we're talking with them on trying to get into the park on an investigation with some of the rangers. So where they'll close the park. So right now, there's a metro park where a lot of stuff's happening. There was a sighting that took place where a ranger actually encountered one. It was a snowy night. He was in the parking area there, going into the park. He was checking on something, getting back in his car. He saw a large dog off to his left in the wood line. Okay, so he's trying to get the dog's attention to come over, and the dog wouldn't. He said it was huge. He had part of a sandwich or a hamburger or something like that, and he was trying to call it over, and he ends up throwing it over to him, thinking it would come out to get it, and it didn't. So he gets in his car, he backs the vehicle up. Now the headlight, and he's getting ready to pull forward to get out. So the headlight's hitting the animal. He said it stood up on two legs and had this god-awful expression on its face. And he said, it had arms like a human, high-pointed ears, and it ran across the wood line on two legs and went across the road. So, and so I was up there within 24 hours of his sighting, when we got the report. And we counted, I talked with him out there, he showed me where it was. We counted 168 tracks coming from the woods up to where it was. And they were human-style footprints, but there were three toes with claw marks. I mean, these things are neat-looking tracks. And like you said, we counted 168 of them that came in. Yeah, I mean, I've got pictures of them. They are something else.
You're really making me think about when a dog comes barking at me on the mail route, whether I should spray it or kick it now, because you never know.
He'll just stand up and just kick it.
Yeah, I'm like, who's his dog's
Actually,
uncle?
what happened is the dog would throw Grover a sandwich, and he'd come running.
I would take a sandwich on most days. Holy, so you're actually got an investigation in the works then to go up, or you're hoping to?
Yeah, we're hoping that they'll let us do it. They're kind of itchy about it right now, to be honest with you, because it was at one point they were going to do it, and then they decided not to going to do it. They lost contact with us and wouldn't talk to us.
What's a metro park? It's a public park. Why can't you just show up there and say? And not
you can't be in there at night.
Ah, that's it. That's right.
You can't be in there.
And here you have an employee of the park sees this thing, knows it's there. Why wouldn't you just want to go and get rid of it?
Right.
Because it hasn't hurt anybody yet. That's the thing.
Yet. Oh boy. Well, Joedy, this has been fascinating. This has been a great interview. I mean, we've gone down a couple roads where we did not expect to go down, and I know our listeners are probably going to be.
Well, this took our Dogman stuff to an entirely different level.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
this is
that-
great.
Oh, this goes from sneaking around burial grounds to being out in the battlefield with swords and cutting, basically soldiers in half, and
Unbelievable.
yeah, it's crazy.
Jeez. So Joedy, tell our listeners where they can find your information, especially if they got a Dogman story or Dogman report they want to get to you.
They can go to www.NorthAmericanDogmanProject.com. They can find all of our information on there. There's a page you can file a report. There's a page you can join. Page you can sit there and just ask questions. We have I can't think of what it's called right now. You can go in and talk to
Like a
different
moderator
people.
or something?
Yeah, like a moderator in there, where you can talk to other people that's on their discussion board. So you can talk to a lot of people there, on that discussion board. And like I said, feel free to join. We'll get you in contact with people in your area, where you can talk to different people, get involved. Just get out there in the field and learn, do something, help out the organization.
Yeah, well, we encourage everybody to go check because it's a great website. Lots of good stuff on there. So, Joedy, we really thank you for spending some time with us. We know you had some domesticated duties you got to take care of while you were talking to us. So we hope dinner goes well.
Yeah.
But we appreciate this was even better than we could have expected. So.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been outstanding.
I appreciate it. Had a good time. Anytime you guys.
Hey, come back on after you do some of these investigations. We'd love to hear what happened.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Signing off
Yeah, definitely.
from the Shadows Podcast, and we look forward to hearing the results of Jody's investigations in Akron
Oh yeah.
and going down land between the lakes. I think we should send our field investigator, Jerry,
Send Jerry down there.
He would be the tastiest snack.
with a thing of Jack Link's jerky and see if he makes it back.
He might not make it back.
Yeah, he just get lost and end up in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.